The real North lies beyond the Wall. It is inhabited by tribes that refer to themselves as the Free Folk, known by the people of the Seven Kingdoms as Wildlings. Apparently, Wildlings are descendants of first men who stayed on the northern side of the Wall after it was built. The Wall stretches for 300 miles along the northern border of the Seven Kingdoms, defending the realm from the Wildlings. It is over 700 feet tall and is made of solid ice. It was supposedly constructed using both magic and mundane means some 8 millennia ago in the aftermath of the Long Night to defend the realm against the White Walkers. The wall which separates the Free Folk from the rest of the Westeros in many ways defines them. Due to their isolation, they remain a free people, free of states, nobles, kings and their laws, following whatever leader they please. They believe that the gods made the earth for all men to share, and when the kings came with their crowns and their steel swords, they stole it. The Free Folk keep to the ways of the first man, and there are many languages beyond the Wall. The Wildlings themselves are not politically unified, but consist of numerous and diverse groups. Yet, however different Wildlings may be, one thing all of them have in common is their belief in a man keeping his word. Many of them are semi-nomadic hunters due to the impracticality of agriculture in the far north. There are tens, possibly hundreds of thousands of free folk split into hundreds of cultures, tribes, clans, villages, and raiding parties, some reasonably cultured, others savage and hostile. The Free Folk refer to themselves in that way to difference themselves from the Kneelers, the people south of the Wall subject to lords and kings. They view the Kneelers as lacking freedom, whereas the people of the Seven Kingdoms to the south view the Wildlings as lawless and primitive killers, rapists, and thieves. Though Free Folk are not politically unified, sometimes King Beyond the Wall appears. It is the title given to a person who has united the many tribes of Free Folk. Despite its name, the title is not a hereditary or absolute position. It is not a position of any authority except that of the person who can establish it through persuasion and force. For long periods of time, there have been no recognized kings. Jormungand was a legendary first king beyond the Wall, who, together with the Stark King of Winter, Brandon the Breaker, defeated the Night's King, the rogue 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. According to myth, in ancient days Jormungand blew the horn of winter and woke the giants from the earth. Free Folk believe that blowing the horn can bring down the Wall. The brothers Gendel and Gorn were joint kings some 3,000 years ago. They made a tunnel under the Wall and invaded the north. Gorn managed to slay the Stark King, but was killed by his son and heir. According to the people of the north, Gendel and the remaining Wildling army were killed by the armies of the Starks, the Night's Watch, and the Umbers. In the Free Folk stories, Gendel led his people back to the tunnels, but they could not find the exit. His children and descendants are said to still live underground and are always hungry. 1 or 2,000 years after Gendel and Gorn, the Horned Lord, attacked the north, he allegedly used magic to pass south of the Wall. Bael the Bard was a famous bard, raider, and womanizer who wrote songs about his own life, which are still used to this day. The Lord of the North at that time, Lord Brandon Stark, once called Bael a coward. To take revenge of this affront and prove his courage, Bael climbed the Wall, took the King's Road and entered Winterfell under the guise of a singer named Sigeric of Skagos, which means deceiver in the old tongue of Skagos. There he sang until midnight for the Lord. Impressed by his skills as a singer, Lord Stark asked him what he wanted as a reward, and Bael only asked for the most beautiful flower blooming in Winterfell's gardens. As the blue winter roses were just blooming, Brandon Stark accepted to offer him one, but the following morning the single virgin daughter of the Lord had disappeared, and in her bed was the blue winter rose. Lord Brandon sent the members of the Night's Watch looking for them beyond the Wall, but they never found neither Bael nor the girl. The Stark line was on the verge of extinction when one day the girl was back in her room, holding in her hand an infant. They had actually never left Winterfell, staying hidden in the crypts. Bael's bastard with the daughter of the Lord Stark became the new Lord Stark. When 30 years later Bael was king beyond the Wall and led the Wildlings army south, he had to fight his own son at the Frozen Ford. There, incapable incapable of killing his own blood, he let himself be killed by Lord Stark. His son brought back Bale's hat to Winterfell, and his mother, who had loved the bard, seeing the trophy, killed herself by jumping off the top of a tower. Later, Bale's son, Lord Stark, was skinned by the Boltons in their centuries-long struggle for dominance. Raymond Redbeard united the Free Folk clans beyond the Wall in the time of Jon Snow's grandfather's grandfather. He had seen the Night's Watch decline, and in the year 226 after conquest took advantage of this situation, sending his reavers over after establishing a toehold for themselves on the wall. They used thrown ramparts of their own and dropped ropes and ladders for his people to cross over and march south. Because the Night's Watch was caught off guard as Redbeard's horde came down upon the north, its Lord Commander, Jack Musgood, was henceforth called Sleepy Jack. Eventually, Redbeard's host met a bloody end on the shores of Long Lake, caught between Lord Willem Stark of Winterfell and the drunken giant, Lord Harmond Umber. During the fight, Willem was slain, and his younger brother, Arthos Stark, slew Raymond Redbeard. Redbeard's brother fled from battle and was known after as the Red Raven because of his hair color, and because the bard who composed the song on him needed a word that rhymed with Craven. The Watch arrived too late to fight the Wildlings, but in time to bury them, the task that Arthas assigned them in his wrath as he grieved above the headless corpse of his fallen brother Willem. Mance Rayder is the most recent king beyond the wall, who likes to get inspiration in Bale the Bard's deeds. Most of the Free Folk live east of the vast Frostfang Mountains, where the climate is hospitable enough for the haunted forest to grow. The northern Frostfangs contain hidden valleys heated by volcanic activity, which are actually the most hospitable regions north of the wall, and heavily settled by the Free Folk. The mountains act as a windbreaker against the freezing Arctic winds that blow down from further north. The west side of the Frostfangs are thus perpetually frozen and quite desolate, since foothills of the Frostfangs actually begin to the west of the isthmus of the continent where the wall was constructed. The men of the Night's Watch rarely make contact with wildlings that far away, and the lands west of the mountains are poorly mapped even compared to other lands beyond the wall. For the same reason, the lands west of the Frostfangs don't even have much contact with the majority of the wildlings who live east of the mountains, because the passes are so difficult. Two major groups of wildlings, however, do live in the Arctic wastes west of the Frostfangs. One of those groups are the Men of the Frozen Shore, a culture of free folk that fish along the northern coast of the Bay of Ice. The Men of the Frozen Shore are actually not that much different from the other wildlings, as due to their coastal location, they can bypass the mountains by sea easily enough, so they still maintain a regular degree of contact with the other wildlings to the east. At least, they are about as friendly and cultured as any of the other wildling groups to the east, though their harsh climate has resulted in some unique adaptations in their culture. The Frozen Shore men have queer names, as they name themselves after beasts of the region. They employ chariots made of walrus bone as transport, pulled by dogs as large as direwolves. There are at least two factions of them, one wearing antlers on their hats and others wearing walrus tusks. The two swords do not get along with each other. Bear Island has historically been raided by wildlings from the Frozen Shore. Before Mance Rayder negotiated a peace, the Men of the Frozen Shore warred with the Ice River clans. Ice River clans are the second major freefolk group that lives west of the Frostfangs. They live further north of the Frozen Shore, in one of the most isolated corners of the lands beyond the wall. This far north, the rivers that run into the Frozen Shore are commonly frozen into ice, from which they are named. While the Men of the Frozen Shore can obtain food from the fish of the sea, the Ice River clans of the interior inhabit a true Arctic wasteland, utterly inhospitable to human habitation. Thus, the Ice River clans frequently survive by raiding surrounding tribes, typically the Men of the Frozen Shore, literally hunting other men so they can eat them. They are openly known as cannibals, feeding on neighboring tribes and each other, and even the other wildlings consider them to be savages, wild, burly, cultured, and considered more than half feral. general, they are among the fiercest of the Wildling tribes, if not necessarily the most refined or the best armed. Some say that reasonably cultured Thans who live in tightly knit communities are cannibals as well. Thans consider themselves the last of the first men. They speak the old tongue and most have only a few words in the common tongue. The Valley of Fen is hidden deep within the northern Frostfangs, but it is one of the most fertile and hospitable areas north of the wall. The entire valley is heated by volcanic activity, giving it a far warmer climate than surrounding lands. The Fans are savage fighters, but because of their belief in the Magnar, their chief, as their god, they are absolutely obedient and more disciplined than other free folk. They are often better equipped than most free folk, with bronze helms and axes of bronze. Because they have laws and lords in their valley, some consider the Fans more sophisticated than other free folk and closer to the people south of the wall. They also have more dealings with giants than other men, since both groups speak the old tongue. Giants are a non-human race considered to be a legend by the inhabitants of the Seven Kingdoms south of the wall. However, giants do actually exist in the furthest north beyond the wall, and have had some interactions with the human wildlings. This is in contrast with both the Children of the Forest and the White Walkers, which even the wildlings claim to have not seen in thousands of years. While hostile to men, giants are a shy folk who use little technology. They wield huge clubs that are often no more than logs, though some tie boulders to the end to make crude mauls or use huge stone axes. They ride mammoths as steeds and are protective of the animals. Giants speak the old tongue of the first man, referring to the Children of the Forest as Wog Dak Nak Gran, or Squirrel People. Magmar Tundoch Weg is considered their greatest living warrior. In contrast to stories of bloodthirsty giants, their warrior, Wunweg Wundarwun, or simply Wunwun, is a vegetarian. Giants roam freely and reside beneath tall trees or in caverns. They speak a particularly rudimentary form of the old tongue of the first man, known as Magnuk, or the Great Tongue. Contrary to the proper old tongue, Magnuk lacks any of the complex linguistic systems that any language has, as the giants simply lack the mental capacity of an ordinary human being. Then there were the people of Hardhome, which is the closest place the free folk had to a city. Hardhome sits on a sheltered bay and has natural harbor deep enough for the biggest ships afloat. Wood and stone are plentiful near there. The waters teem with fish, and there are colonies of seals and sea cows close at hand. A great cliff looms above the settlement, pocked with cave mouths. Hardhome was close to becoming the only true town north of the wall. Before its destruction, Maester Willis journeyed to Hardhome and established himself as a healer and counselor under the protection of Gorm the Wolf, one of the 4 chieftains who controlled the settlement, so that he may write of the local customs. However, Gorm was murdered and Willis, in mortal danger, fled back to Old Town, where he wrote Hardhome, an account on 3 years spent beyond the wall, among savages, raiders, and woods witches. One night, about 300 years before Aegon's landing, Hardhome was destroyed. Something terrible happened that night. The details are uncertain. Its people are said to have been carried off into slavery by slavers from across the narrow sea, or slaughtered for meat by cannibals out of Skagos, depending on the tale one chooses belief. The homes of the inhabitants of Hardhome were said to have burned with flames so high and hot that the watchers on the wall far to the south thought that the sun was rising in from the north. Afterwards, ashes rained down on the haunted forest and the shivering sea alike for almost half a year. Traders and a ship sent by the Night's Watch to investigate reported only nightmarish devastation where Hardhome had stood, a landscape of charred trees and burned bones, waters choked with swollen corpses and blood-chilling shrieks sounding from the cave mouths that pock the great cliff that looms above the settlement, a cliff where no living man or woman could be found. After that, Hardhome was shunned. The Wildlings never settled the site again, and rangers roaming north of the wall told tales of the overgrown ruins of Hardhome being haunted by ghouls, demons, and burning ghosts with an unhealthy taste for blood. Hardhome was considered an unholy, cursed place since then, though as the Wildlings flee from the return of the White White Walkers. Many have taken refuge there and partially rebuilt Hardhome. And then there are cave dwellers that live in the caverns of the Frostfangs and dye their faces blue, purple, and green, and file their teeth. Some accounts state the cave dwellers worship dark underground gods. The Hornfoots live in the foothills of the Frostfangs, far away from the coasts. The hard rocky terrain in the mountains hardens and blackens their feet until it is as tough as leather, and they do not need boots. The Hornfoot people warred with the Night Runners before Mance Rayder negotiated a peace between them. Not much is known about the Night Runners, so is about hundreds of other free folk tribes, though it is known about the overall customs of the Wildlings. Some Wildlings are semi-nomadic loners, held down only by their own needs, but in marriage the men are expected to be quite forceful with women, going so far as stealing them from their home or clan. The women, in turn, are expected to put up a fight every step of the way. It is believed that a true man will steal a woman from afar to strengthen the clan. While stealing may be very different from the idealized courtly love of Westeros, at its core it establishes a male's strength and determination, as well as a female's independence and ability to defend herself. In keeping with the spirit of the free folk independence, women are welcome to take up arms and fight alongside men. Such women are called spearwives and are known to be every bit as ferocious as their male counterparts. Because infant mortality is common in the harsh environment beyond the wall, it is believed to be bad luck to name a child before he or she reaches 2 years of age. A temporary milk name or nickname can be given to a child prior to the official naming. Raiding south of the wall is a large part of the free folk culture. They either climb the wall or use little boats to cross the Bay of Seals around it. Climbing the height of the wall is an exercise that can take most of a day, and rangers often find the broken bodies of those who have fallen. Over the decades, with the weakening of the Night's Watch, the free folk have grown bolder and started raiding as far as the Umberlands, the northern mountain clans, or even Burr Island, instead of the usual villages and holdfasts in the Gift. Raiders cross the wall to steal swords and axes, spices, silks, furs, and any valuables they can find. They are known to take women in any season to carry them off beyond the wall. Most free folk warriors still wield weaponry forged of stone, wood, and bronze, such as stone axes and flails, fire-hardened spears and lances, and bows of wood and horn. Their bows are outranged by the longbows of the south, but can seemingly shoot an arrow as high as 700 feet. Their horses are sure-footed, but scarce. The free folk do not mine nor smelt, and there are few smiths and fewer forges north of the wall. The only metal armor that they wear are bits and pieces looted from dead rangers. Most wear boiled leather and use crude round shields of skin stretched over wicker, painting them with figures such as skulls and bones, serpents, bear claws, twisted demonic faces, and severed heads. The free folk do not hate Northmen as much as they hate the crows of the Night's Watch, who represent the gatekeepers holding them beyond the wall. They do not spur brothers of the Night's Watch unless they break their oaths and prove it. However, the two groups are not beyond some form of cooperation. They sometimes trade at Eastwatch by the sea. Lost brothers have been aided by free folk, and the Watch sometimes take free folk children and raise them to be members. There are few notable locations beyond the wall. Whitetree is a small wildling village consisting of only 4 rough communal cabins, a sheepfold, and a well. Its name comes from the giant weirwood that is in its midst. There are at least 3 wildling villages south of the Whitetree that are found abandoned by the Great Ranging under Lord Commander Jor Mormont. All 5 of the other villages on the journey from Castle Black to Craster's Keep are similarly abandoned. Craster's Keep is the grand name given to a small fortified homestead located several days' journey beyond the wall, 60 miles from Castle Black. It is the residence of Craster, a wildling who lives there with his daughter wives. He permits the use of the keep as a refuge and a resupply post by the Night's Watch in return for otherwise leaving him alone, and the occasional bribe. The Fist of the First Man is a simple circle of large megalithic stones around the top of the hill. Ranging parties from the Night's Watch use it to orient themselves and also as a possible fallback position in case of combat with the free folk. It can only be reached by a steep climb on stony ground and has served as a natural defensive position since the time time of the first man who built it well over 6,000 years ago. It is called the Fist because the hill looks like a fist thrust into the sky from the flat landscape surrounding it, and the jagged remaining stones circling the top look like the knuckles of a fist. The Skirling Pass is a path into the Frostfangs located beyond the wall. The pass is named for the keening sound the wind makes as it blows through it. Quarren Halfhand, a ranger of the Night's Watch, is an experienced scout who knows the mountains and the pass almost as well as a Wildling, and since it is considered as a probable place to find Mance Rayder's Wildlings, Quarren's group is sent to scout it for signs of Wildlings. The southern Frostfangs are actually part of the north, and the mountain tribes who live there are not Wildlings, but are sworn to House Stark. While they do live a somewhat rougher life than the other people in the north, they are on good terms with Winterfell. Indeed, Ned Stark's own grandmother was a member of the northern mountain clans. When people refer to the Frostfangs, they are usually referring to the bulk of the range, which is north of the wall, and inhabited by the Wildlings. The Milkwater is a river located beyond the wall. It is created from several tributaries that originate in the Frostfangs and runs south along the mountain range until it pours its waters into the Bay of Ice. It carves a deep gorge through the mountains as it empties into the sea at the western end of the wall, which is guarded by the Shadow Tower. The Lands of Always Winter is not rigidly defined name given to the lands that lie in the furthest north of the continent of Westeros. They are so named as snow falls in these lands even in the warmest summers. The Wildlings control some of this territory, but it also extends into subarctic wastelands that are not hospitable to human life. The White Walkers originate in this region. The land wasn't always a winter-covered wasteland, having been a fertile land inhabited by the Children of the Forest in ancient history. The Cave of the Three-Eyed Raven is a place located beyond the wall. It serves as the residence of the Greenseer, known as the Three-Eyed Raven, and a group of Children of the Forest who protect it and him. Above the cave lies an ancient and massive weirwood tree with a face carved on its trunk. The weirwood's roots dig deep into the cave and have merged with the body of the Three-Eyed Raven. The entrance to the cave is protected by the magic of the Children of the Forest and prevents whites from entering it, destroying the undead creatures if they attempt to enter. The North Grove is a protected area north of the wall, inhabited by the bastard children of Lord Gregor Forrester. The Wildlings have heard stories about it, about a forest within a forest. Most inhabitants of the North believe it is only a story. However wild the free folk may be, they do engage in at least some long-distance trade. The heavy furs of local animals adapted to the harsh cold of the extreme north are fairly valuable, and they often trade them to passing smuggler ships in exchange for iron weapons, which they cannot forge on their own. In past centuries, the Night's Watch tried to stop the fur for iron trade along the coasts, but in recent centuries, as their numbers dwindled, they have almost abandoned any attempts to prevent passage around the wall by sea. But the history of the wall and the Night's Watch is a story of duty, and there is no freedom in the duty, aside of choosing duty over freedom. Thus, a separate story must be told about the wall and the watch. See ya.